What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we're gonna revisit one of the best metal amplifiers on the planet, the Peavey XXX. That's a lot of X's. Let's do it! Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain related guitar gear, I record it with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes who had way too much caffeine this morning, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so based on my recent Peavey 6505 1992 original, I had a lot of fun making that video and just kind of trying out different guitars and different tones and stuff, as opposed to my normal amp demo playthroughs where I kind of go through a very specific set of tones and gain levels and guitars, trying to make them as scientific as possible, always putting them through the same cabs with the same pickups and the same overdrives. So it kind of just led me to the idea of doing a more laid back style review series. Not necessarily review, I think this is going to be called my revisited series. And I'm gonna go back and I'm going to visit amps that I've already done demos of, but I'm essentially going to kind of try it out with a bunch of different stuff as opposed to my normal demos where everything is very rigid. So for me, I felt it only made sense to go ahead and do the XXX again, because XXX is one of my favorite amps on the planet, and I reviewed this amp very, very early on in my YouTube journey, I guess. And I feel like the quality of my videos has gotten a lot better. The quality of some of my gear has gotten better. And I really just kind of wanted to revisit the amp and see what else I could get out of it for you guys. And for the longest time, these amps were just extremely underrated sleeper amplifiers. They looked corny, which is why you see, I've altered the aesthetics of both of my amplifiers here. I do have two of these. And I really think that not only the naming structure, but the aesthetic of the amp is kind of what held it back from reaching legendary status early on, because these amps came out and they were the successor to the Ultra Plus model. They came out not long after the 5150 model in the 90s, and it just seemed like they never really took off. So after talking to John over at Peavey, I did confirm that the XXX was originally supposed to be a George Lynch signature model, but George decided not to move forward with the project with Peavey, and Peavey just went ahead and put the amp out anyways. And God, am I glad they did, because this is one of the best all-around metal amps that you can get. And they still go fairly cheap on the used market. You can still get them for, you know, $650 roughly for good condition, sometimes less if you look really hard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run through both of these. I've got a couple different guitar cabs with different speakers. I've got my Lauten Audio LA220 FET condenser to pair with my SM57 because they make a great pairing in my experience, in my personal opinion. And we're gonna run through those different speakers. We're gonna run through a few different guitars. And up here, this XXX actually is, it has completely different tubes in it. So the one that you're hearing has Ruby 6L6 GC power tubes, pretty common in these XXXs. But I have swapped out the V1 tube for a Tungsol ECC 803S. I believe that's the model number of the tube. Anyways, it's a lower gain tube, and you can see I've got the gain dialed up just past noon on the crunch channel, and I have a boost out in front. We've got the Electric Eye Mud Killer. These amps are typically like just ultra gainy right off the bat. So I threw a lower gain tube in V1 in order to give the gain a little bit more range, and it also seems to add a little bit more clarity to the amp overall. And up here in the top, we've got all 12AX7s in the preamp section, but we've got some JJ KT77 power tubes. So these two are gonna sound a little bit different from each other. So I figured why not show them both to you, because it's my video and I can do what I want. So for the intro, we were using my Solar, don't remember the model number? Cheat sheet. Solar V2.6 AG. This has the this has the stock Duncan designed Solar pickup in it. And again, we had the Electric Eye Mud Killer going in front of the amplifier. And right now I'm on my Friedman BE 4x12. This is one of my favorite 4x12 cabinets. This is the one that I've recorded a lot of stuff with for my actual band's projects. We've got that Lauten audio on the V30 on the bottom, and then we have the SM57 on the greenback up top. So let's hear how that sounds again. We are on the crunch channel. God, I forgot how good these amps are. I friggin' love how this sounds right now. Whenever people ask me the differences between the 5150 and the XXX, I always tell them that the XXX very much has that Peavey sound. It's got that upper mid thing going on, and it's got the kind of, I guess, buzzy, the really saturated style of gain structure that the 5150 has going on. That's kind of just a Peavey thing. But these are tighter, they're more surgical, they're more percussive, and in my opinion, they're a little bit of a clearer amp overall. This pickup is not the clearest pickup in the world, but you guys will start to see the clarity when we switch guitars around a little bit. But yeah, man, I just love the voicing of this amp. This is one of the few amps where I truly feel like with the right settings, I could get away without a boost. So let's turn that boost off. So in order to do that, here's what I would do. I'd bump the treble and the mids a little bit, and I would pull the gain up just a tad and pull the low end back just a tad. These controls, these EQ controls are active, so they all are interactive with each other, and little adjustments make a big difference in how the amp sounds. So I think I would go a little bit more gain. Still very percussive. One of the things about these amps, they do have a resonance switch on the back that goes from tight to middle to loose, and you pretty much always have to run them on loose because they are so tight that if you run it on either of the other two settings, the amp kind of sounds pretty thin. I'm gonna bump it over to the mid setting real quick. And we also lost some volume, so let's turn the volume up. All right, and finally, we're gonna go over to the tight setting. So yeah, overall, it's a little tighter, it's a little bit more percussive, but I just generally don't like how it sounds in those two different resonance settings. So we're gonna go back. All right, so we are also going to add a little bit more mid and pull out a tad bit of high. It's still pretty punchy, but I prefer it with an overdrive in front. As you can see, our gain is almost all the way up, so that tube in V1 definitely has a big impact on the level of gain. Let's go back, let's turn on the MXR M77 Badass Modified Overdrive, because this is the overdrive that I owned for, you know, when I first got this amp, and it was the overdrive I used for years with this thing. Ah, that just sounds so good, man. I love that. So the crunch channel on these amplifiers is not a crunch channel at all. It is just a slightly different flavored, super high gain channel to the ultra channel. And a lot of people, myself included, tend to prefer the crunch channel on this amplifier because it's still super saturated, still very tight, still very high gain, but it's a little bit more open in the mids. So we're gonna do a couple more riffs here, but another thing about this amplifier is the volumes are interactive between the two gain channels. And what I mean is when you dime the volume on the ultra channel or turn it up, it actually acts as like a brightness or a presence on the crunch channel, and the amount that you hear that is also overall affected by how high you have the master volume. So the channel and master volumes play together, and then the two volumes of the gain channels play together as well. This was not a feature, this was actually like an issue based on how they designed the amp originally, if I'm not mistaken, but the volumes will have an effect on how the other channel sounds. So if you only play with one channel at a time, you can kind of use that to your advantage to dial your tone in, gives you a little bit more control. But if you're trying to switch between the two channels, using one for a rhythm and one for a lead, you're not gonna be able to utilize that volume function to shape the channels further. So here, we're gonna dial this ultra channel all the way down, the volume. We're gonna dial it up to noon. And we're gonna dial it all the way up. All right, so now we turn that ultra volume all the way down. And it sounds kind of muffled in comparison. So again, you can use that to shape the tone to the way that you want it to be. Let's move over to the ultra channel real quick. I'm gonna dial that crunch channel up to about noon. And now the ultra channel sounds super thin because of that, so we're actually gonna dial that master back, and we're gonna pump up the channel volume to thicken it up a little bit. So at the moment, we've got too much mid, too much high. Very, very thrashy though. We're gonna dial that crunch volume up a little bit. We're gonna get a little more saturation with the gain. But with having this low gain tube in the amp, you really have to push the gain to get it saturated, so it definitely does not work as well without a boost, and pushing the gain that high is also making the amp sound fatter. So it doesn't work as well for that little trick. But anyways, let's pull the gain back. Let's get the Boss SD1 on. And let's get that bass back up and a little bit more gain. All right, I'm spending way too much time on one guitar. Let's switch over to something else. All right guys, so I have my EC1000 here, and this is actually the guitar that I owned at the time when I got this amp. So these tones should be right at home for me. Sounds just like I remember it sounding. That was actually one of my old band's riffs, and I recorded with this guitar and that amp for the EP that we put out, and it sounds literally just like I remember it sounding. Let's go back over to the Crunch channel though, because I just like that better overall. All right, so now let's play another one of my band's riffs that I used this amp to record. It's so sick. I love the clankiness. It's just got that awesome palm mute going on. Sounds, I love this amp so much. All right guys, LTD, Bill Kelleher 600 model with the Lace Dissonant Aggressor pickups. Oh my God, that is an incredible thrash tone right off the bat. Oh my God, this guitar, I forgot how much I love this guitar, number one. This thing plays incredibly well, sounds awesome. But yeah, that is a sick, sick thrash tone. Let's go over to this one because you will notice that there are some very audible differences between these two. Okay guys, so we're on the other amp and we have very similar settings except for the gain is lower and the volumes are set just ever so slightly different, but the main EQ controls are basically the same. My bottom knob here is not put on correctly, so even though it looks different from there, we have the bass at about the same setting. Oh, that is still one of my favorite thrash tones. It's so punchy, it's so percussive, it has such an awesome growl to it. This amp overall has a little bit more kind of punchiness and depth to it with those KT77s. It's a little bit more low mids as well. This one in general I just think sounds a little bit better than this amp. But yeah, there are some pretty, some pretty noticeable differences, and also we have way more gain with the gain set lower. But I think it's time that we switch out of cab. Let's get something with DV77s in here because I have a feeling that this amp is gonna pair super well with that speaker. All right guys, so I have my custom Omega 412 here with the DV77 speakers in it. We have the microphones in the exact same position. We've got the SM57 up top and the Lauten Audio LA220 on the bottom. We have touched none of the amp settings. Here's what it sounds like. It's gonna be a pretty big difference. All right, so that sounds incredible. I'm gonna switch guitars to something else. How about something with Fishmans in it? Because I have never played this amp with Fishmans. I gotta be honest, I don't like that at all. There's a super weird mid-range thing going on there. Nope, whatever's going on in that mid-range does not work for me one bit. Let's try something else. All right, guys, Fishman Classic instead. Let's see how this does. All right, that's a no for me as well. On to something else. All right, guys, if my 05 Gibson Les Paul Custom with a 498T in the bridge doesn't work, I don't know what will. Honestly, I don't think the DV77 is a great pair for this amp for my personal taste. There's something weird in the mid-range that is just not jiving. It seemed okay on the Bill Kelleher, but on every other guitars that I know that I like, it is not sounding quite right to my ear. So last but not least, let's try it with that 7-string. All right, guys, so I actually went and grabbed my KSR 412 Custom just as a last-ditch effort to get some good tones to end the video. And we've got the 875 Creamback and the Redback loaded up in this cab. Haven't touched anything else. Here we go. All right, that is much better for my personal taste. That cab actually sounds really good with this amplifier. Really good. Let's grab that BK again and do one more riff, because that guitar sounded perfect with this amp. All right, that's gonna do it for me today, guys, on the Peavey XXX. What did you guys think? I don't know, it was fun for me to do this kind of revisit, loose hangout with you guys and try some different speakers, try some different guitars and stuff like that, and just kind of riff around. Let me know if you guys want to see more videos like this in the future. Personally, I think it sounded best through the Friedman cab. It's sounding awesome through this KSR cab as well. It did not gel with the DV77s, in my opinion. There was some weird mid-range frequency going on that I just personally did not like at all. I know that I like these speakers with other amplifiers, but for that, it just wasn't working for me. But what did you guys think? Let me know down in the description, down in the comments rather, and I'll meet you guys down there to talk about it. If you want to support my channel, as always, affiliate links, Zounds and Sweetwater apply. Click on those links, get yourself something nice. Costs you nothing extra, and it allows me to get more gear for the channel, and it is pretty much the best thing that you can do to help out. Or you can add your name to this list of incredible people by joining my Patreon community and supporting the channel that way, where you'll get weekly update posts and live hangout sessions with yours truly. And if you choose to support the channel that way, I will love you forever whether you want me to or not. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.